Today, in Part 7 of Vigyan Bhairav grant, we will discuss in detail topics such as the realization of zero, etc., through contemplation of the beginning and end of letters, aksha. So, we're diving into a profoundly transformative concept today. Think about something we do every single day: speaking, listening, forming words. What if that very everyday act was actually a direct doorway to ultimate consciousness?
To truly grasp this, we have to start from a place of absolute stillness. This profound internal contemplation we're unpacking today, it literally requires complete stillness of both body and mind. When the external noise finally fades away, your internal energy centers, the chakras, begin to align. And it's really only in this state of deep, undisturbed quiet that we can fully understand the mystery of the letters, the akshar.
The Shiva-Shakti dialogue, the search for the void.
The entire framework of this ancient text is essentially a divine conversation. We have Devi, or Shakti, asking Shiva a very practical question. How do we actually realize the ultimate unmanifested truth? How do we touch that infinite void from which everything emerges? And what's absolutely amazing here is that Shiva's answer completely skips over complex, elaborate rituals. He doesn't ask for some impossible physical feat. Instead, he points her right to the everyday spoken word. The supreme reality, he explains, is hidden right there within the boundaries of sound. Every single syllable we utter holds the key to the universe, if we just know exactly where to listen.
Okay, let's dive into this. With verse 40, the encounter with the void.
Looking at page 32 of the source text, we find verse 40. This anchors our explainer in the pure authenticity of this tradition. This specific text represents the 17th dharana, or method of concentration, and it's where all that high-level theoretical philosophy we just touched on transitions into stark, practical application. Scholars and commentators have meticulously preserved this teaching for centuries just because of how incredibly direct it is. Let's look closely at what these ancient lines actually say.
The Sanskrit verse reads, Yasya kasyapi varnasya purvantavanu boyet. Shunya shunya butso shunya kara puman boet. As I say that, notice the space. Notice the absolute silence required between the lines and even between the syllables as they are spoken. That physical silence you hear, that is actually the precise subject of the verse itself.
Let's break down this literal English translation like we're studying this together. The text tells us that by contemplating the absolute beginning and the absolute end of any letter, any akshar, the practitioner becomes one with the void, the shunya. Now, quick clarification here, because the word shunya is absolutely crucial. In our modern vocabulary, we hear zero or void and we think of nothingness, right? Like a vacuum. But in this spiritual context, shunya is the exact opposite of empty. It is the state of infinite potential. It's the blank canvas before the painting begins, and it's the canvas that remains long after the painting is erased.
The step-by-step method of realization.
So how does a yogi execute this in real time? Let's walk through 4 distinct stages using a modern analogy. Picture yourself sitting in a massive, grand concert hall. Step 1 is the pre-utterance silence. That's that heavy, expectant quiet right before the orchestra strikes the very first note. Step 2 is the physical sound, the akshar, the actual vibration of the music filling the room. Step 3 is the fading echo, where you watch that final note decay into the architecture of the hall. And finally, step 4 is merging into the post-utterance void. The music is gone, but the silence that follows feels radically different from the silence before, doesn't it? It's thick, resonant, and alive. And that is exactly how you are meant to observe a single spoken letter.
When we compare these two states, the contrast is pretty wild. The physical letter, the akshar, represents vibration, form, limitation, and transience. It's born, it lives for a fraction of a second, and then it dies. But the void, the shunya, that is silence, formlessness, boundlessness, and pure eternity. By focusing your mind intensely on the exact microsecond a sound is born from the void and the exact microsecond it dies back into it, your consciousness literally slips through the gap between sound and silence. You enter the eternal space that holds both.
Mantras and the fading sound. Backing up just a bit to page 30 of our source document, we find verse 39, which acts as a vital precursor to verse 40. This is where we see how this entire concept applies to the practice of sacred mantras. The text specifically discusses the pranava, the primordial sound of Om. When a practitioner chants Om, it is never just about making a loud noise. The true yoga lies in observing how the gross sound of Om slowly fades. It stretches out into an increasingly subtle vibration until it perfectly dissolves into a state of absolute tranquility. As the gross sound of the mantra ends, the subtle consciousness enters the limitless space. And this brilliantly illustrates the core mechanism of the dharana. The sound itself is merely a vehicle. Think of it like surfing. You ride the sound of the mantra like a wave, and when that wave finally crashes and flattens out onto the shore of silence, your consciousness just steps off the wave and directly into the vast ocean of shunya.
Multidimensional significance.
Let's methodically break down this framework to understand why this specific method is so incredibly central to Kashmir Shaivism, because it hits on multiple levels. From a spiritual perspective, contemplating the beginning and end of a letter allows your individual mind to achieve direct union with universal consciousness. You literally become the space where thoughts happen rather than the fleeting thoughts themselves. Religiously, within this tradition, it's the ultimate realization of Shiva nature, that unchanging, foundational reality behind all things. From a tantric perspective, you are actively harnessing the energy of sound, known as nada, using its subtle fading resonance to pierce through internal chakras and elevate your physical energy. Philosophically, it beautifully resolves the ultimate duality, showing that creation, the letter, and emptiness, the void, are actually one continuous loop. And practically, perhaps most importantly for us today, it provides a highly accessible tool for attaining deep, unbroken mental peace right in the middle of a chaotic, noisy daily life.
Bringing it all together, the essence of zero.
So what does achieving this void actually mean for the human experience? If we successfully follow Shiva's instructions to Shakti, what happens to our day-to-day reality? Well, the realization of the void yields some profound results. First, it brings freedom from the bodily ego. You realize you aren't just the physical form making sounds, but the vast, untouchable space containing them. Second, it causes the dissolution of worldly anxieties. When you deeply understand that every passing thought and stressful word is just a temporary vibration that must inevitably return to silence, anxiety fundamentally loses its grip on you. Third, you gain the profound realization that the entire universe arises from and returns to this pristine silence, revealing how interconnected everything is. And finally, you maintain a constant, steady awareness of the unmanifested reality. Realizing the void isn't about disappearing or becoming numb, it is about finding an absolute, unshakable stability amidst the relentless noise of the world.
Which leaves us with a question to ponder long after this explainer ends. If the ancient texts are right, if the ultimate, limitless truth of the universe exists right there, hiding in the microscopic silence before and after every single word you speak, how will you listen to your next conversation?